Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. Off day on Monday, as the NBA took the slate off to allow the national championship game all its glory. Allowed us the opportunity to get out our best ball rankings. So for subscribers, for playoff best balls for the competition on Underdog Dance. So subscribers to Established Run, any of the DFS packages, whether you're a weekly subscriber, monthly subscriber, you can hop on over and get those ranks and update for the Underdog contest. As always, the sirens start right whenever I go on air.
Every time.
This is just incredible. 13 games on the docket today. I'm already exhausted. Mike, how are you?
Yeah, it's basically like rained NBA wise. We're getting a double header of NBA action today. It is outrageous. Really long injury report. So not gonna ask you how you're doing. Let's just get going.
Yeah, let's get going. And as we signed on, we got news that Trae Young is ruled out. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's just kind of go game by game and roll through these. On the Cavs side of things, Isaac Okoro out again. Jared Allen returned over the weekend. Any notes on how you would expect Cleveland to operate without Isaac Okoro, and whether we can expect to still see sort of elevated minutes, because the Cavs' magic number to clinch the 4 seed is 1, and they have an outside chance at getting to the 3, but basically would need Philly to lose out. So that hope might stay alive after today. But do you think we'll still see these elevated minutes from the Cavs moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. Pending, garbage time and all that stuff. But definitely think Dean Wade's gonna start again. There is a quote from JB Bickerstaff, and they want him to be a quote safety net on this if this Okoro thing keeps him out. So definitely more of the Dean Wade look here. Certainly a ton of minutes from Karis LeVert, getting full on all the guard minutes that are being left over. A lot of three. They could he'll find minutes, but I definitely think Wade starts and probably get a little more minutes out of Jared Allen returning from soft tissue injury.
On the other side of that game, the Magic, who've been playing, pretty well in their own right. Admiral Schofield, questionable here. He's been kind of fringy in terms of the rotation. What notes do you have on the Magic and how this impacts things?
Nothing. We can probably just move on.
All right, let's move it on to Detroit really quickly. Just a reminder for Detroit. Out Bojan Bogdanovic, Alec Burks, Cade Cunningham, Hamidou Diallo, Rodney McGruder, Isaiah Stewart. Those are all old out tags. The new one is Marvin Bagley. So in the absence of Marvin Bagley, what are your expectations for how the Pistons operate tonight?
Yeah, this gets pretty tight. I think that the headline for me is this is a little bit more likely they're going to run some overlap with James Wiseman and Jalen Duren. We've seen them kind of go away from that, but we saw this, prior to Duren getting hurt. Last month, I think he could, that was happening. And now you've got, Omiyuri, who's a 3-4, a little bit more of a 4. Isaiah Livers is a 3. He's going to play 4. So you've got a lot of minutes at the 4 up for grabs here. So I think that's going to happen here. Definitely think OG Omiyuri gets the start at the 4, Isaiah Livers at the 3. Livers' minutes have been, not too big. We saw him play like upper 30s prior to him rolling his ankle last month. So I think he maybe has a bit more of a minute ceiling here. But yeah, it could be a bunch of minutes for Ivy, Hayes. Matchups not great, but not terrible. Miami's defense has slipped a little bit, but it could get a little tighter here, especially in the front court.
On those Miami side of things, Bam Adebayo listed probable, Kyle Lowry listed questionable. So Bam was upgraded during the course of the day. He started the day as questionable, upgraded to probable. So that's good news there. Miami still on the periphery of the hunt for the 6th seed, trying to stay there, trying to move up in out of the play-in, but also trying to hold on to the 7th seed. So still an important game for Miami. What are your expectations on this Kyle Lowry questionable tag once again?
I think he's in. Not a back-to-back. That's usually been the driving force on why he's going to sit. So, and we saw that last time he was kind of up in the air for the back-to-back. It was because Gabe Vincent was hurt, and then Gabe Vincent plays, Kyle Lowry sits, etc. So, expect Lowry in. That means no Oladipo. And curious to see how they handle the second unit and the first unit here, because we saw over the weekend with Bam out, they pulled Kevin Love out, which I kind of thought would happen. Of course, Love went completely ham in his first stint, but Eric Spoelstra said after the game that they're going to look at continuing to start Max Strus, bring Kevin Love off the bench, possibly run him as a backup center. So this means he wouldn't be surprising to see Kevin Love go starter to out of the rotation because they do like Cody Zeller. Cody Zeller was really impactful, certainly dream matchup against the Mavs. But I think Kevin Love's minutes could be really hurting here. For what it's worth, he had the same color jersey as Caleb Martin at shoot around today. If you want to read more into that. So I think that's something to watch there. But especially if Kyle Lowry's out, it's getting kind of tight. But I do think they're going to start. And I talked with Justin Fan. We're both expecting them to start Max Strus. So Tyler Hero, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Jimmy Butler, and Bam, assuming he's in. Should mention Bam. Keep an eye on his minutes. He had like some trouble walking, which is why he was out. So it wasn't like a managed thing. Obviously, they need all the wins they can get to.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the Milwaukee-Washington game. We'll start with the Washington side, where Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, Monty Morris, Kristaps Porzingis were all ruled out. And then out of nowhere today, Denny Avdia not just ruled out for this game, but ruled out for the next game as well. That's basically a starting lineup there for Washington. So what are your expectations without Denny Avdia, along with the four main starters that they had been without, what Washington looks like tonight?
Yeah, that is a top-heavy injury report with those players out. It's Johnny Davis time. They're going to play him a bunch. He basically said he's going to start again in his post-game interview, so I expect him to get a start here. Monty Morris maybe gets shut down, so we're going to get DeLon Wright, Johnny Davis, Corey Kispert. We're expecting Anthony Gill to start as the sacrificial Lamb, not Anthony Gill, but not Anthony Lamb, Anthony Gill, but he will be a sacrificial lamb as he probably has to guard Giannis, Daniel Gafford, and then we'll see pretty decent amount of Jordan Goodwin, maybe some Cooks, some Taj Gibson, the second unit, Kendrick Nunn, Quentin Jackson. It's got some minutes, he'll probably get some more here, but yeah, I think it's an opportunity for Johnny Davis to play a bunch, really to close up the season.
Yeah, and Corey Kispert's had a huge bump in usage rate the last few games, really just firing away from three. Would expect him to have kind of a, the go signal is again the green light with regards to 3-point bombing away tonight. So you might see another heavy usage game from Corey Kispert. As you can see, though, even when the shot's falling, there's not a lot else. So from a fantasy perspective, 29 points, 4 threes, but only 3 other stats. Other than that, hard to build a ceiling for a player like that. On the Milwaukee side, Grayson Allen and Chris Middleton are out. Javon Carter and Myers Leonard both listed probable here. What's your expectations on how the Bucks operate tonight?
Yeah, keep an eye out for possible additional tags. This game should be pretty easy for them, so maybe they find other additional guys to rest. Grayson's ankle is legit on him rolling it, so I was talking with Chris Lafagas, and this could affect best ball a little bit if Grayson is going to be injured for that amount of time. We're still pretty far out, so we didn't really go that route, but I just wanted to note. So almost certainly going to be Javon Carter sliding into that starting lineup, and then Pat Connaughton will take Chris Middleton's spot. So we saw Pat Connaughton get completely nuked. He's been basically kicked out of the rotation. We actually really dinged him in best ball for this recent last 2 games development of him losing minutes. But without Chris Middleton, should find time, a little bit more run for Jay Crowder, a little bit more for Bobby Portis and those guys. But pretty thin here. And keep your eyes peeled for additional Buck stuff. They do play tomorrow too.
Yeah, and they're not too far away from putting away the number 1 seed overall, which is really what they're playing for here. The matchup tomorrow is against Chicago, which I don't know if it's one that they'll put any sort of emphasis beyond or not. But essentially, if they win tonight and Boston loses, Boston's playing Philadelphia tonight. That would put them 3 games up with 3 games to play. So they'd be closing in on clinching things. Right now, I think their magic number is 3. I think so. So they can't clinch it tonight, but they're inching their way there, and their remaining schedule is relatively soft. They still play the Wizards. They play the Wizards tonight, and then they play. I guess they play Memphis, Chicago, Toronto. So not super soft. So would expect the main guys to be in there tonight, however long they go, based on game environment, but big spread, lots of blowout risk there. Okay, let's move to Toronto and Charlotte. On the Charlotte side, once again, a lengthy injury report. LaMelo Ball out, Gordon Hayward out, Kelly Oubre, Terry Rozier, PJ Washington all out. Mark Williams was originally listed probable, has just been moved to doubtful tonight. We thought it was the night that Mark Williams was supposed to be sitting based on their rotation, but it's been a little bit of a messy guessing game at that of late, simply because one game that PJ Washington got hurt early in, they went to Kai Jones as a backup power forward, and that kind of confused us for last game where they didn't use Nick Richards and they used Kai Jones purely as a backup center. So now no Mark Williams, Dennis Smith Jr. questionable as well. We'll see if he's available tonight. There's really Charlotte, as we've alluded to before, they have nothing to play for in either direction. If they win games, it doesn't matter for their lotto balls odds. If they lose games, it doesn't matter for their lotto ball odds. So my guess is the Dennis Smith Jr. thing is like a legit whether he's able to play or not. Like he would want to play, right? To showcase opportunity for him. So what are your expectations on if we see Dennis Smith Jr. and either way, what the rest of the Hornets front court kind of looks like tonight?
Yeah, they are the only team who's locked into a lot of position, as you mentioned. But I don't have a read. Right, I talked about this last week. He was the first guy to warm up when he first got dinged with this toe thing. We saw that 1 minute late scratch or 30-second late scratch that has kept him out. So very tough to read the situation. Not getting much hints from Clifford. Obviously, Tell Maladon is playing ridiculous, huge touch time, 14 freaking dimes over the weekend that got us on an under. But we'll know this one right away. First game of the day, and just to kind of give some more background on this Nick Richards, Mark Williams stuff. So PJ Washington got hurt, and it was Kai Jones's turn to sit, and they slotted him into backup 4 because they had to play him because they were slotting PJ for so many minutes. But then, it was going to be Nick Richards' turn to sit on Sunday, and they kept it there. They let Kai Jones play all the minutes, soak up all the backup 5s, all the backup 4s, and he had pretty decent line with 3 blocks and a steal. So it sounds like they're going to run that route again. So a lot of Kai Jones, definitely going to play garbage time, big spread. So there's possibly some ways to attack it. And I get just a headline here. God, there are so many huge spreads today, and also 13 back-to-backs. This is just a nightmare slate.
Yeah. And we should note big minutes for Nick Richards tonight as well. We've seen when Mark Williams has been in that starting role, which Nick Richards will now slide into is the expectation. Mark Williams played like 35 the other game and then played a huge first half role and ended up only at 27. But there's a big minute ceiling there for Nick Richards as well, who's been very productive on a permanent basis. They are playing Toronto again in a rematch of last game. Toronto on the front end of a back-to-back year. Toronto, one of these teams that has everything to play for in terms of the standings. They are currently tied with Atlanta for the 8th slot in the Eastern Conference. 8th slot, much, much more desirable than the 9th slot. You only need to win one game to get into the playoffs as opposed to the 9th slot. Because of tiebreakers, they're currently 9th, so they're behind Atlanta. Atlanta's playing Chicago tonight. So this looks like those are the two teams right around Toronto. This looks like kind of a free, win situation. You pick up ground on somebody if they're able to take care of business, but their injury report is littered as well. OG Anunoby questionable with a left ankle sprain that happened late in the 4th quarter. He was hobbling around. It did not look comfortable for him. Gary Trent still questionable with what continues to be listed as lower back spasms, despite whatever commentary Nick Nurse has on Gary Trent's elbows. And then Precious Achiuwa listed as questionable with a non-COVID illness today. They will have Will Barton available. He's listed as probable with a left ankle sprain, and Delano Banton listed available here. What are your thoughts on what we see from the Raptors tonight?
Yeah, so Nurse wants to play Gary Trent. He said that he's close and he might have a minutes limit on him. He said that OG's ankle sprain is, quote, very, very mild. And he said that being cautious, quote, doesn't sit well with me, which, what a Nick Nurse quote. So expecting OG back. Keep an eye on his ankle. He mentioned he tried to play through it at first and he was really hobbling. So I think he's out there. So starting lineup will be the same. And just, oh my God, Fred VanVleet pick and roll game, outrageous. Goes 20-20 on them with the perfect vision. Expect those guys to start. I think Trent, like I said, minutes limit. So I haven't looked at Raptors minutes yet, but I'd probably put him at like 23. I think they do want to limit him a little bit, and they're just gonna. It's just because they're gonna. And actually, with the big spread, maybe not that much, but expecting a minutes limit on Gary Trent if he does return.
Yeah, it is the front end of back-to-back. The one thing that I'll note, though, when you worry about blowouts with the Raptors, this game was well in hand. up 18-20 in the fourth quarter. And you can see Pascal Siakam got up to 38 minutes. Jakob Poeltl got to 30. Scotty Barnes, 36. OG Anunoby turns his ankle and has to miss some time and still 34. So you see the big minutes numbers there. It is a front end of a back-to-back tonight. In tomorrow's game against Boston,
Celtics,
much tougher game. So maybe they'll be more conservative on this one, but it's worth noting that they did not choose that route on Sunday. So you might still be able to get full minutes here. And as you can see against Charlotte, my word, the upside, right? You talked about Fred VanVleet going 2020. Well, Pascal went 36, 7, and 7. OG went 23, 7, and 1. Like a lot of guys, Poeltl, 6, almost a double-double with 5 stocks. A lot of these guys would have been very, very, would have been very good plays even on a 13-game slate, recognizing they were on the early slate on Sunday, so it wasn't that big. But point being, you can still get into Toronto tonight, even with the spread issues. Let's move to Minnesota and Brooklyn. Brooklyn, I don't think there's anything to cover. Ben Simmons is listed out. He's been out forever, so we can skip past them. Minnesota, Naz Reid going to be out for a while. Questionable tags on Karl-Anthony Towns, Austin Rivers, and Jalen Noel. What are your thoughts on these questionable tags for Minnesota, which have been questionable themselves all season long?
Yeah, non-back-to-back. We should get Cat out there. What the hell happened on Sunday, man? My man gets 3 shots against the Blazers. How is this even possible? But just all time, I heard Zach Lowe say it was the biggest spread loss. They were 20-point favorites, and you lose this game when it's hashtag biggest game of the season, and you can't get that win. Just peak Wolves for sure. So I'm expecting Cat to full go again, not a back-to-back. So should get pretty full minutes there.
Yeah, and obviously they're in a position tonight where they can, I think their magic number is 2 to clinch a spot in the play-in. They're currently 2 games up on Dallas with 3 to play. And they're 2 games back of the 7 and 8 spot, the Lakers and the Pelicans. They still do have a game with the Pelicans in hand left to close the season. So they could still have hopes of getting into that 8th seed. But that loss against Portland was just brutal. They need it tonight. Any notes on these back end guards and how it might affect the rotation, if at all? Jalen Noel and Austin Rivers, they seem to be, out of favor of late with Chris Finch.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last week. You're slotting Kyle Anderson as your backup 1, so you're basically just taking away those minutes a little bit. And now that Prince is back, he's kind of playing a little 3-4. So they've got their top 7, and then you're filling in the gaps with a little bit of McLaughlin and those guys, but just not a lot of upside here. Again, they need to play their guys as much as they can to get a win.
Yep. Okay. Let's go to Atlanta and Chicago. This is where we can talk about Trae Young, who was rolled out in a really big game. From this slate's perspective, this seems like the biggest game on the slate. Atlanta currently 1 game ahead of Chicago. Atlanta holding on to the 8th spot. Chicago holding on to the 10th spot in the Eastern Conference. They'll be without Trae Young. They'll be without DeAndre Hunter as well, who is without with that knee issue. Trae Young is a non-COVID illness. We've seen these non-COVID illness tags be really, really tough all season long. You guys know that have been listening to the show. I've been still 2 weeks later, still struggling with this cough from this situation that I dealt with. So it seems to always cost guys a game. How are the Hawks going to react without DeAndre Hunter and without Trae Young? What do you expect the starting lineup to look like?
Yeah, Chris Lafigas too, still struggling, man. Hope you guys feel better. It's horrible. Big. I mean, the DeAndre Hunter thing's a big deal on top of the Trae stuff, because we saw Sadiq Bey slot right into those minutes, and now that you've got to basically use Bogdan on the front end of a back-to-back, mind you, to now fill this Trae Young minute role. A huge, huge disadvantage for the Hawks. So I would still expect them to start that way. DeJounte, Bogdan, Sadiq Bey, John Collins, and Clint Capella. Definitely we'll see AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson. Kong will pick up most of those minutes. Do they bring in Garrison Matthews? They bring in Aaron Holiday? I would say I think that we'd project them for minutes. I would probably lean Holiday just because you need a little bit more handling there. But yeah, there could be. They kind of have no choice. I think that they're just going to kind of cross their fingers that Washington sits everyone out tomorrow and they could kind of just coast to a win. But they got to play guys pretty tight minutes here, and obviously big usage up for grabs with Trae Young out of the picture today.
Yeah, you mentioned front end of a back-to-back, but given the opponent tomorrow, given the opponent today, given the lack of Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter, you got to think we're seeing really, really elevated minutes now. Obviously, the minutes you're looking at on the screen in front of you are from an overtime game, so you're adding 5 to it from most of the main starters there. But would not surprise me if we saw DeJounte Murray, Sadiq Bey, up Bogdanovic up into the upper 30s. Bogdanovic maybe more mid 30s, but you're going to see a whole lot of playing time if this game is competitive. And it'll be interesting to see if they can stay in it. The Trae Young's absence is a big issue for me with my bets because they're playing the Chicago Bulls tonight, and I just continue to bet whoever guards Trae Young for over half a block every game the Bulls play the Hawks, and it's been a very profitable strategy. And I've been rugged. I do not have the opportunity to hit it one last time this year. Let's move to the Bulls. Probable tags for Alex Caruso and Javonte Green. Caruso has been the impactful one. Javonte Green not really in the rotation. So what's your read on Caruso? And as we talked about this, they keep kind of playing him when it's been surprising to us. But they're working their way into having a chance at getting up to 7-8, which is really the goal for them, right? If they can get to 7 or 8 somehow, then they just got to win 1 of 2 games to get into the playoffs. A team that has sold the future, so is in win now mode. What are your expectations for minutes for Alex Caruso tonight?
He seems to be right in that sweet spot of mid-20s. So it's kind of hard to think anything else. We talked a little about this for best ball too. If we should up them, just on the chance that they maybe play him more if there's in the series if they want to play him more, but it just hasn't been there. So pretty straightforward. Kobe's been hot. Kobe White's been kind of one of the sneakier second unit players putting up numbers. So he's kind of benefited a little bit as this rotation should be pretty tight today. So we got the starting lineup, a little bit of Paul, a little bit of Kobe. Ayu's minutes have been kind of cut down because of it. And then maybe a little bit of Drummond back from his personal issue last week.
Yeah, I actually think that Hawks second unit, which is different now when you move Bay into the starting lineup and whatnot, but it's been crushing teams on the boards. So I actually think this is a decent spot for Andre Drummond to get almost all of those backup center minutes from Vooch. Sometimes they switch mid game with like Derrick Jones and stuff like that. I also don't think you need to worry as much about being super switchable against this Hawks team without Trae. So I don't think it's as big of a deal for Andre Drummond there. Let's move to Boston and Philadelphia. Questionable tag for Jaylen Brown with lower back pain tonight. Robert Williams listed out with left knee injury management. This game still, Philadelphia's slipped to 3 games back with 4 to play of Boston. So they'd have to win this one. Boston can essentially lock in a top 2 seed with a win here. What are your thoughts on Jaylen Brown's availability tonight?
Yeah, back-to-back set here for back pain. Missoula kind of hinted that he may be dinged up, so definitely a chance he misses here. I think they would probably go for this one, so I don't know if I think that they want to try to, ice this thing, so I think he's going to probably try to suit up. Obviously, if he is, then we'll see the 2 guards, Smart White, and then the Jays, and then Al Horford in the first unit. If he doesn't play, I think they would go to Sam Hauser here, just to get some minutes, and that way you can kind of shuffle in Grant, just as if things go bad for Horford, you get a little insurance there. But it sounds like I think Brown's probably got a pretty good chance to play.
Elevated Horford minutes tonight without Robert Williams against Embiid, front end of back-to-back with the expectation that he'll sit tomorrow. Is that your expectation for Horford?
Yep, would expect him to definitely sit tomorrow. So yeah, get all you can out of the Mr. Chocolate Milk, and then let him recover tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Philadelphia side, nothing we need to tackle there. There's no questionable tags, so hopefully it stays that way. Let's move to Denver and Houston. The questionable tags for Denver: Zeke Naji, but more importantly, starting center Nikola Jokic, and some of the commentary around. Jokic has missed the last 2 or 3 games, and some of the commentary around this right calf tightness is that they're going to be very conservative with it. Denver's magic number to clinch the number 1 seed is 1. So they just need 1 win or 1 Memphis loss in the last, I think each team has 3 or 4 games. Seems very likely that they're going to be able to get that, and they can be very conservative here. What are your thoughts on Jokic's availability tonight?
Yeah, Mike Malone sounds like he's going to keep him out of games. It doesn't sound like it's very serious, but I think they want to make sure he's 100% for the playoffs. They do have that other week coming up. as they wait, because they wouldn't play until Sunday because you got to play the 8 seed who's playing and then give them a day off. So they're going to be playing Sunday when the playoff schedule comes out. So they've got a lot of time to heal up. So maybe he comes back. Don't have a great read besides just the commentary on as far as the detail of the injury, but maybe his minutes are down a little bit too. But not too much to add. Obviously, I think they like this little small lineup with Aaron Gordon and Jeff Green at the 4-5. They've been kind of turning to a little bit more. They just have no faith in Thomas Bryant and DeAndre anymore. And obviously, if no Zeke Najee, then they would insert guys probably. We saw a pretty big game out of Peyton Watson up the bench. He made some pretty big plays. So yeah, he's maybe someone to watch. Bruce Brown also is another guy who's pretty impactful.
Yeah, I was interested in that because Peyton Watson was drafted as a future wing defensive stopper kind of guy whose offense was going to take a while to get to kind of NBA level, and they hadn't broken him out very much all season, and he gets busted out last game against Golden State, which is a hell of a time, against the defending champs, to break a guy out and get him rotation minutes. I'm really interested to see if they try to sort of microwave his development in these last 3 or 4 games here, just to get a look in case they want to throw like for a possession or two, like end of half type scenarios, him out there. He's a name that I'm interested in watching as somebody who's been following the Nuggets for a while, because this is a guy defensively, and they've been trying to draft defense around Jokic, right, with Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. So it'll be interesting to see if he can hold on to more of a role, obviously dependent on Zeke Najee, because without Zeke Najee, it opens up, pushes Jeff Green up, opens up those wing minutes a little bit more.
And should mention KCP getting over illness, should be back, but his minutes have been real nasty. We shaved a little bit off him for best ball, and maybe we should shave more.
I think it's a short-term thing with KCP. He shot the ball really poorly. He's been sick. He's been battling through injury issues. I think it's a short-term thing for him, but we'll see. Houston side, just a bunch of outs. Nobody that I think we need to touch on. Jayshawn Tate is still out with left knee soreness, but Houston's been kind of what it's been for a while. Let's move to Memphis and Portland. I'm going to need a little bit of a breath before I get to Portland's injury report. So let's start with Memphis. No Brandon Clark, no Zaire Williams, no Steven Adams. That's all known. Dylan Brooks, questionable right hip soreness. What's your expectation on his availability?
I think he's sitting back to back here. So we've seen David Roddy get the start there. Maybe they go to Luke Kennard, but I would expect David Roddy. But expecting him to sit. I'm curious to see if other players get added. Just because we saw them have a pretty crazy rest amount last week. So yeah, expect him to sit. Expecting David Roddy to start. A little more for Kennard. Maybe we get a little more Santee and those guys. But I think he's going to sit this one.
In another team in Memphis that doesn't have a ton of movement to play for, right? They'd have to be perfect and have Denver be winless to jump to the 1 seed, and they've got a 2-game lead with 4 to play on Sacramento, so in pretty good shape there as well. As you noted, the last back-to-back we saw from them, remember 1 game Ja sat, and then the next game Jaren and Bane sat. So we haven't seen Brooks get a day off. Seems like a natural spot here. Portland. All right. Let's get to it. Portland. Outs. Jeremy Grant, Keon Johnson, Damian Lillard, Nasir Little, Yusuf Nurkic, Anthony Simons, Justice Winslow. Questionables. Trendon Watford, Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, Kevin Knox, John Butler Jr. With respect to Ibu Abaji, I did not note him as an out, but that is 13 players listed on the injury report as questionable or out today. There are 5 questionable tags that are all pretty important into who is left and who is available. What are your thoughts on what we see left from the Portland Trailblazers?
That is hilarious. They're probably just gonna sit everyone. And they were like, "Oh my god, we beat the Wolves. How can we make this worse?" So apparently it's to sit Matisse Thybulle, Trendon Watford, Cam Reddish, Kevin Knox, and John Butler. So yeah, a lot of let me see. Could be a lot of Shane Sharp. Shane Sharp didn't play garbage time 2 games ago. That kind of sucks because we've been hoping he plays like 40. But he'll play a bunch. Skylar Mays will be playing a bunch. We saw him pick up and have a pretty big role, pretty big ball handling role as well. Who else? Who's left here? Sorry, I've got to catch up myself here. We'll see Drew Eubanks starting for sure. And then I'm trying to pull this up here. There we go. I guess. I mean, I'm trying to think if everyone's out. They would start Jabari Walker, right? If everyone else
So
is out.
the guys that they'd have left if everybody else was out would be
Mm-hmm.
Shaq Harrison.
Yep.
Was Kevin Knox was on that questionable
It's
list, right?
questionable. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so if everybody's out, Shaq Harrison, Shaden Sharp, Jabari Walker,
Jonathan Williams.
Eubanks, Jonathan Williams, Skylar Mays. That's only 6 guys.
Okay, so that means probably John Butler's going to play then.
So
I think they're only going. I think my point is they're only going to suit up 8. Yeah. Well, we saw them run a 7-man rotation, so they could have like 8 healthy, and then
play
play 7. Yeah, we saw them do that last week. I think that's what they're going to do.
So there's going to be value here. It's going to be disgusting against the Grizzlies team that's pretty good defensively on the road, where the Grizzlies have been incredible all year at home. I mean, Portland, it could be really, really ugly, but there's going to be so many minutes available that we're going to have to touch on it from a DFS perspective. So catch us behind the paywall later to do so. All right, Sacramento and New Orleans. On the New Orleans side, it's what we've come to expect. No Jose Alvarado, no Zion Williamson, nothing else on the injury report, thankfully, there. So I think we can skip past them really, really quickly. Sacramento, Malik Monk is listed on the injury report, questionable with left lower leg soreness. Again, not a big game for Sacramento. They're pretty locked into the 3 seed. They could potentially move up to 2 if the Grizzlies really stumbled here, but you heard the team that the Grizzlies are playing tonight that we just talked about. So I think they're more likely than not to be a little bit more conservative with Malik Monk here, but what are your thoughts?
Oh my God, Javon Carter now questionable. So he's going to probably miss now. These upgrades or downgrades, whatever you want to call them. No update from Mike Brown on Malik Monk, kind of a late-ish scratch. I think they kind of thought they could handle the Spurs and Trey Jones and Zach Collins and Doug McDermott had other ideas, but so I think he might sit this one out. They are on it. Yeah, they're on a back-to-back. So I would kind of lean he sits. So that's a little more Kessler Edwards. Obviously, Terrence Davis would enter the rotation here. And perhaps the bigger headline would be better minutes floor for Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, and those guys. But Mike Brown was pissed. He was not happy with this performance. So I expect him to go out there and, really try to dominate this game. Pretty big game for the Pelicans. So kind of it's not really the big games to watch, but it's up there. It's actually one of 5 or 6 games with a tight spread.
Yep. Big one for the Pelicans, not so much for the Kings, but that doesn't mean the Kings won't treat it like one, right? They're a team that is coming off a really embarrassing loss. The coach might be upset and be like, hey, you can't drop your focus in advance of the playoffs. Let's get back to playing like a playoff environment, which New Orleans probably won't be because their home crowd isn't usually like that, but a big game for New Orleans. Let's move to the Lakers and the Jazz. On the Lakers side, LeBron's still listed questionable, AD listed probable. We think those guys are both playing. The LeBron questionable tags have been pretty conservative all year long. Are you're not sure?
Back to back. They played a hashtag biggest game of the season tomorrow against the Clippers. That's a massive, massive, massive game. So this is not a fake questionable situation. AD, as of last back-to-back, was not cleared for back-to-backs unless I missed it when I was away from my computer for a little bit of the day. I don't think he got cleared. I could check that really quick. But, there is a chance that one or both miss here. So with D'Angelo now, he had a precautionary issue.
That was my note. That was going to be my note, is that him getting downgraded from probable to questionable to me is probably more of a signal that they're going to try to get through with LeBron and AD. But LeBron is the one who's listed questionable. So if there were the 2 guys, if one were sit, if you're suggesting, it seems like LeBron would be more likely than AD.
I would say so. But I mean, those tags are useless. AD gets a probable tag regardless. They might just. No, I think that I'm with you, but I wouldn't be like shocked if it's AD sitting today and LeBron playing. So I don't know the details of LeBron, managing back-to-backs. You would think the LeBron James of foot doctors would know a little bit about management on back-to-back sets. So maybe he sits out here, but Utah. I mean, this spread's like 11 now, so I think you just cross your fingers. AD has been ridiculous, so I think LeBron's got a decent chance to sit. And then obviously that would mean really big role for Dennis Schroeder. Austin Reeves will get more ball handling. Malik Beasley, Troy Brown would start. Those guys would kind of come back to life a little bit.
Regardless, a big thing to note there would simply be that if these guys are available and they do play, they're probably going to be on the more conservative side of the minutes, given the front end of the back-to-back and the importance of the game tomorrow, and be kind of playing the minutes as needed, essentially. So you could see something where LeBron and AD end up at like 28, 27 minutes tonight if the game is in hand, as you saw in that game against Houston where LeBron ended at 29 and AD at 30. They probably didn't even need to go that far with those guys. So, pay close attention to it tonight. Be careful out there. Utah side of things, no Jordan Clarkson, no Lauri Markkanen, no Rudy Gay, no Walker Kessler, but they will get Colin Sexton back. Unclear what kind of role Colin Sexton would be ready to contribute here. It's important because we've seen such a big role from Talen Horton-Tucker. But more importantly, no bigs here, really. Without Walker Kessler, without Lauri Markkanen, that's a lot of runway for Kelly O in terms of guys that they're comfortable and willing to play. You'll see Juan Toscano-Anderson's minutes increase, Udoka Azubuike increase. Maybe we see some Damian Jones in a revenge spot tonight. What are your thoughts on how Utah tries to handle things tonight?
Yeah, I was talking to Fan about this, and we talked actually pre-Laurie news, but we both kind of thought that Udoka Azubuike would be getting the start here. I think you want to maybe have a traditional center to give more size against AD, especially if LeBron's going to play. So I think that makes sense. And they seem to like him. So I think he would get the start. Not confident at all. This could be a situation where we know most of the starters. We know Kelly Olynyk's going to start. We know Talen Horton-Tucker is going to start. Or at least we think we are. Maybe they shock us and start Sexton. Oshek Bashi is going to start, and then pretty confident that Simone Fontecchio is going to start. So, they could go smaller-ish. Maybe they start Sexton and run like a Talen Horton-Tucker, Sexton, Agbaji, Fontecchio, Olynyk. That's possible. So yeah, there's like 10 different iterations of how this lineup could shake out here, but expecting a minutes limit on Colin Sexton, aggravated soft tissue hamstring injury. That's usually a pretty hard cap. Why would you play in big minutes if he hurts his hamstring again? That's really bad. So we have him, I think, at 18 minutes. But yeah, we haven't heard much there. So definitely a little bit more ceiling coming off Talen Horton-Tucker, though.
Is the expectation that of those minutes that we see from Colin Sexton, most of those will be second unit with Chris Dunn as opposed to with Talen Horton-Tucker? Because I'm trying to think that, if this is more relegated to minutes that THT wasn't on the floor anyway, it might not hurt him as much. Obviously, revenge spot for those who care about THT in his vengefulness. But I'm kind of thinking it might actually have a little bit more impact on Chris Dunn, who we've seen have a little bit of a higher usage rate than normal in this role with the Jazz. So maybe Colin Sexton takes over as that second unit usage guy because they don't have much in that role right now.
Yeah, definitely can see that happening.
Okay. Let's move to Oklahoma City and Golden State. Both these teams we can move through pretty quickly. Golden State, Andrew Wiggins still listed out with personal reasons, but yesterday there was a report that they're expecting a return from Andrew Wiggins this week, which is really important for playoffs and for playoff basketball. We won't see him tonight, but what are your expectations in terms of when we do see Andrew Wiggins, what kind of ramp up we might see?
Yeah, not too clear on the situation, but it's encouraging to see that we're going to have, it sounds like a week or so of him being able to work on his conditioning. If he wasn't already, we don't know that stuff, but we've seen this little small ball lineup come out there when they want to put Jonathan Kuminga on wings. Would that be more likely now? Would they be more willing to start a bigger lineup with Seth, Clay, Wiggins, Kuminga, Dre? I think that's something they would look at. But I don't think Kuminga is going to be affected all that much. I think it's going to be Dante DiVincenzo, depending on the matchup. If he's going to be guarding a wing or a smaller-ish ball handler, I could see the minutes getting cut if it's against a wing. So I think DiVincenzo's minutes will be affected. Kuminga won't have the upside. Anthony Lamb probably goes away entirely. Jordan Poole's got downside to his minutes as well. We dinged him in our best ball rankings a little bit. Gary Payton's also in the mix too. They're suddenly having a lot of ways with their wings to fill in here, and then getting back the best one of the bunch, the second best player for them down the stretch after Steph, is huge. But expecting a bit of a ramp up though.
All right, Oklahoma City, nothing on the injury report currently. Shea not listed on the injury report, so that's good news. Just Chet and Kenrich Williams, who are both lost for the season, still listed out, so we can move past them to the last game of the slate, San Antonio and Phoenix. Phoenix has nothing listed on the injury report, so there doesn't seem to be anything that we need to tackle there. They are on the front end of a back-to-back, I believe. Or is their back? No, their back-to-back is later in the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not on the front end of a back-to-back. They're just giant favorites. The matchup with San Antonio's injury report, one of these Portland-type situations. No Devin Vassell, no Jeremy Sohan, no Charles Bassey, no Kem Birch. Doubtful tags on Keldon Johnson and Romeo Langford, and Zach Collins is questionable. So they could be really thin once again. They're coming off of a win that, again, it doesn't matter a ton in terms of lotto balls. It just matters in terms of where you land if the lotto luck does not go your way, which they've now slid behind Houston with 20 wins on the season, Houston at 19. They will probably finish in that spot because my guess is Houston doesn't win another game. What are your thoughts on what we see from San Antonio tonight?
Yeah, pretty nasty here. So we know that Trey Jones is going to start. Pretty confident that Malachi Branham's going to start. And then if Zach Collins doesn't start, it'll be Sandro Lamakamashvili, probably getting Devontae Graham in there. But a lot of big size and scoring on the other side. Maybe they go with something a little bit different. They like Blake Wesley to play on-ball defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just throw him to the not the Timberwolves, but the Wolves in the form of Devin Booker. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that KBD getting the KD matchup. But obviously Sandro will be interesting. Had a pretty decent game the last time he got the start. We saw Dominic Barlow actually play really well down the stretch. And Julian Champagnie also was a big impact. He's a candidate to start as well if they want to get more size. So I think the Sandro stuff's easy, but that last starter is between Champagnie, Wesley, and then Devontae Graham. I would say Devontae Graham's the favorite. He started the last time. So,
all right, we managed to do it in just under 45 minutes. Get through the 13 games on this slate. Another couple larger slates Wednesday and Friday, and then the huge slate on Sunday to get through before we get to playoff basketball. And playoff basketball is what we want to talk about. As always, support the people who are supporting us. The show is brought to you by our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. They've got playoff contests running for the NBA, the dance, which we've released rankings for on ETR for subscribers. So you can use those rankings, upload them right into the contest and draft away for the dance. They also have daily NBA snake drafts running for money, in addition to many other contests for many other sports. The Albatross is going on this week for the majors contest. There's MLB contests up and going. So any best ball or snake draft that you want to participate in, Underdog has your needs. If you are using ETR, if you're an ETR subscriber, you can use ETR projections to compare our projections to their fantasy pick'em games. You can see Gallagher is getting into dance drafts as we speak. You can join him there and compete against him. And as always, if you have not subscribed or if you've not created an account on Underdog, use the promo code ETR for matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right. Behind the paywall, myself and Mike Gallagher tonight at 5 o'clock Eastern, breaking down this 13-game slate. We will try to go as fast as we can. I'm sure we will go well past 5 o'clock, well past 6 o'clock Eastern with this many games to cover. But catch us there. We'll break down the slate. We'll talk about good chalk, bad chalk, contrarian pivots, and of course the flag plants. My flag plant last Friday was so bad that the NBA shut down its entire slate for Monday. Trae Young against Brooklyn was about as bad as it gets. So I will be looking to restore your faith in me with the flag plants tonight. So join us at 5 o'clock Eastern behind the paywall, establishedrun.com/NBA/subscribe if you want to check out packages there. As always, if you are uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we ask for your hard-earned clicks. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, smash that like button, help feed the algorithm. It helps feed our families. We'll keep feeding you DFS injury information analysis you need to make your DFS lineups, your prop bets, your spread bets, so on and so forth. So feed that algorithm. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow.